In our last video, we ended up on the west side of Military Street in the 1000 block, and we ended up on the northwest corner where the gas station was that we looked at across from the Harrington. If you look to the extreme left, you can see a building, not very clearly here, but it's down on Wall Street on the north side, just behind where the gas station used to be, and it's the Wall Street Cafe today. And at one time, John Chittister and Associates had a marketing firm here. The business that was here the longest, and probably best known in Port Huron, is the Israel Photographic Studio. Get a glimpse of it where the red arrow is in this photograph. Here's a little better view of the building, however it's the side and the back of the building. When I was growing up, there was two premier photographers in Port Huron. One was Israel Studios and one was Oscar Shane Studios. And they both would compete for the weddings in town and of course the graduation pictures, such as this one of me. I'm not sure, I think Israel took this one. It was difficult to find a photograph that had the Israel logo on it. But this one here, I found an earlier one that they took. They've been around for a long time. I know they were here in 1924 because they're in the 1924 directory. And I know they were here in 1961 because they were in the 1961 directory. So quite a few years. Photographic studios really took off in the late 1800s, early 1900s. You can see from this directory here that was listed as 1878. You see that there was 3 photographic studios in Port Huron. But on this one here, dated 1899, you see there are now 7 photographic studios in Port Huron. People were realizing that they could have an historical picture taken of their family or of themselves for their grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren to see someday. And it was a very important occasion, in many cases a solemn event, because in so many cases you see the people not even smiling, almost like they're in church. Of course, in my church we do smile. This young Port Huron couple had their picture taken. You would think that they were photographers, but they wanted to look like photographers, and so they had their picture taken beside the camera, and they looked quite professional. This photo was taken in 1900 by the Grant Brothers studio, which was just north of the Military Street Bridge on Huron Avenue. This photograph was taken by W.H. Barron. He was located at 220 Huron Avenue. A photo of a young lady looking quite proper. And here's another one taken by Barron. This one taken by Barron looks like it could be sisters. These next 3 photos you'll be looking at are some advertisement information I found on Barron's photography studio. In this advertisement we have a takeoff on a bird in a gilded cage. It was actually a song, a sentimental ballad, or a tearjerker that became one of the most popular songs of 1900. The songs describe the sad life of a beautiful woman who is married for money instead of love. This photo was taken by P.M. Hart, and as it says, it was located over the First National Bank. At that time, First National was located on the northwest corner of Quay and Huron. Here's one of a gentleman taken by Hart. And here's one taken by W.G. Biddlecombe. At this time they were located at 710 Lapeer Avenue, but later on they were in the Miso building. There's a picture of a young lady here. The photo of this young couple was taken by A.A. Morgan, and Morgan was located in the 100 block of Huron Avenue. Well, as you can see, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, there was quite a few photographers in Port Huron, and we're very fortunate to be able to see some of their work over 100 years later. But the most renowned photographer in Port Huron at that time, and for that matter in the state of Michigan, was J.M. White and Company, which was located in this beautiful building right here. The building was quite unique and very recognizable because of this tower that was on the corner of the building. It'd be great if we had an actual picture of this building, and actually we do. We've got a couple of them. In the first photo here, we can see the Harrington Hotel in the background. And we can get a pretty good look at that tower. It had a very unique type of steeple, kind of a curlicue steeple. The second picture we'll be looking at actually comes from a booklet dated 1897. And as we zoom in here, we can see a picture of Mr. White. And this is what the article says about his photography studio. J.M. White and White's Art Hall are both too well known all over the state to need much description. Mr. White is one of the oldest residents of the city, broad-minded, patriotic, and liberal to a turn. And it is safe to say that there is not a studio in the state that turns out more and finer work than his. The studio is located on Military Street opposite the Harrington Hotel and occupies 3 floors, beautifully furnished throughout, steam heated and fitted with every modern convenience. The operating room, situated on the ground floor, is one of the most complete in America, and the choice photographs that emanate from under the skylight are indeed each and every one choice bits of art. Such work as White's is not attempted in the city, and rarely in the United States. And although this may seem like an exaggerated writing, it was actually true. Not only was he well known in the state, but he was also nationally known, especially among photographers. This photo here that you're looking at right now was featured as one of 5 photographs nationally in a book called Studies from Leading Studios. In this book, it says that this photograph shows a beautiful group made by J.M. White Porcher in Michigan. The posing of hands, heads, and eyes is very good, and the subject looks as if interested in a good story and momentarily distracted by a newcomer. The picture looks as if it were taken in a parlor. The same picture was featured as a cover in Anthony's photographic bulletin, which was basically a how-to for photographers to take great pictures. His endorsement was also coveted by equipment manufacturers of photographic equipment, such as this ad right here. As you can see, this is equipment that Mr. White used in his studio. And here's the endorsement down below. Dear sirs, you asked our opinion on the Suiter lens. You know we have a number 8B, and our opinion is as follows. If you will write a letter in this praise, we will endorse anything you may say. Be sure to make your language strong enough, and it will be all right. Respectfully yours, J.M. White and Company. Well, let's take a look at a few of the pictures that Mr. White took over the years. I'm not sure if this one is a girl or a boy in a kilt, but cute kid. And here's a boy in his knickers. I really like this picture here of this little girl, but obviously someone didn't say cheese. And here's a picture of a gentleman and a lady. And then there was the occasion politician or businessman. The fellow on the left is a judge, Judge Bunce. I'm not sure who's on the right. How many of you know who this fellow is? Well, this is Mr. Tom Edison. And it was taken in 1892 by Mr. White. At the time, Mr. Edison was 45 years old. This photograph here is a relatively large photograph. It's 17.5 by 21 inches. And it was presented to Hazen Pingree, who was the mayor of Detroit at the time and later went on to become the governor of Michigan. Edison had a connection to Pingree because of the electrical lighting system in Detroit, which I'm sure Pingree was very instrumental in helping Edison. This signed photograph was presented to Pingree for display at the City Hall in appreciation for his efforts. And if you look in the right-hand corner in the lower part of the photograph, you'll see the inscription that Edison wrote to Pingree. Pretty hard to read here, but here's what it says. To Hazen S. Pincreed and my old friends at City Hall, very truly yours, Thomas Edison, December 18th, 1892. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner, you can see where Mr. White put his signature. This photograph recently sold for $9,200 at auction. I wonder how much Mr. White got paid to take that photograph. And portraits weren't the only thing that Mr. White took. He also took photographs around the city, as you can see one right here. Of course, not many of these still survived. We're fortunate to have this one. Yes, Mr. White was a photographer extraordinaire. And I think the building that his studio was in was also extraordinary. Fortunately, this building still exists today, and is pretty much the same as when Mr. White had the studio there. Except there's one big difference. I know most of you are going to say, well, the cone on the very top is different. It's no longer a swirly cone, but just a regular plain cone. And you'd be right. But there's something else missing too, and it took me a couple minutes to catch it. The part right here inside this orange rectangle, that whole tower part is missing. So if you would remove everything inside that orange rectangle and put a cone on what was left, that's what you have today. It's still a beautiful building though. Today is the Military Street Music Cafe, but when I was growing up it looked more like this. The Alibi Club occupied the whole first floor of that building. However, before that, AAA had their insurance office right on the corner where White's studio was. And then later, Alibi Club expanded from going right next to it and taking over the whole first floor. Here's a photograph of an older Greyhound bus that's going right by the front of the Alibi Club. I really like that they restored this building right down to the brick, because it gives us an idea way back when we look at this picture that's black and white. We can know exactly what it looked like, with the exception of the tower, because we know what it looks like today. That's the beautiful thing about restoring buildings. Okay, as we mosey along next door going south, this location right here, not this particular building, but there was a building housed here that was very prominent, especially for the ladies of Port Huron. But first, let me give you a little background. Today we have a wonderful library, and the St. Clair County Library shown here. But back in, during my generation, this is the library that we always went to, and it's now the museum in Port Huron. And in my father's generation, this was the library that we looked at a little earlier in our videos. But before that, there was the city library, and that was located in this high school building right here. This is the same location where St. Clair Community College is now. In 1865, 6 ladies met in a small room in the basement of the old Methodist church that used to sit on the corner of 6th and Water Street, just across the street from where the Customs building is today. The purpose of this meeting was to unite their efforts in forming a Ladies' Library Association. The first president of the group was Helen Wheaton Theron. The organization provided women with a chance to meet outside the home and to develop their intellect. Rigorous library exercises, which entailed reading, writing, and discussion, were conducted every Saturday. The Ladies' Library Association also hosted lectures, international spelling bees, concerts, and plays in an effort to improve the cultural life of the city. The very first book in the library was the gift of one of its members, and it was entitled Chronicles of the Middle Ages. And the author was a French fellow by the name of Froissart, which is shown here, or at least a statue. Seemed like pretty heavy reading for these ladies, but maybe they enjoyed it. Actually, the first 27 books were donations. The first purchase of books numbered 86, so that in September of 1866, there were 113 volumes in the library cupboard, duly labeled, and many of them drawn and read each week. After its second year of existence, the Ladies' Library Association membership had grown from 14 to 51, and its library had swelled from 27 donated books to 320 selected volumes. Some of the ladies formed a cyclopedia group that did different events to raise money so they could purchase the Encyclopedia Set Britannica. This would have been today's equivalent of Google. It made a tremendous addition to their library. The ones you're seeing here are first and second editions of that encyclopedia group. The numbers swelled to 1,596 in 1872. Eventually, their inventory of books exceeded 5,000. You can also see from this document that the Ladies' Library Association was being established all throughout the state of Michigan. Many of these books were received from Washington, D.C. through the efforts of Senator Omar Conger. There are many valuable public documents and state papers that Mr. Conger also donated to the Library Association. With all these books, they needed more room. Of course, they started off in the basement of the church. They went to ladies' homes from there. They went to an office just south of the bridge. They went to a lawyer's office, and he said it could be free of charge as long as they supplied the wood for the stove. But eventually, one of the members passed away and left $1,000 for the building fund, and they eventually built a building right next to where we've been looking at. We don't have a picture of that building, but we do have this, which is actually a sketch from the inside of the building looking out on Military Street. The Kalamazoo Ladies' Library Association was the very first one in the state of Michigan. And I think when they built their building here in Port Huron, they probably used that as a pattern for what they wanted. And if that was so, then this is what it looked like, or at least similar. By the 1890s, the Ladies' Library Association had broadened its scope to encompass the study of current events, especially the issue of women's rights. Young turn-of-the-century women confronted a changing world with much greater choices than their predecessors. So the next time you go to pick up a book from the library, think of how it all began. Join me in my next video, and we'll see what else there is to see.